does Hideo Kojima get his ideas? In this podcast, we take a deep dive into his brain and shed light on his creative process. Hideo Kojima presents Brain Structure.
こんにちは、小島秀夫です、ポッドキャストプログラムHideo Kojima Presents、ブレインストラクチャー今回もスタートしました。
Hello, Hideo Kojima here with the podcast program Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. Today, we are joined by another special guest from overseas. So my partner for today will be this guy in Los Angeles.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Keighley, producer of the Game Awards, and TGA, the Jeff's Answer on the Brain Structure podcast with Mr. Kojima. It's such an honor, as always, to be emceeing with you. And as we all know, a lot of you have been writing in with your guest requests in our mailbox. And this is someone that a lot of you have been requesting, and I'm sure you knew eventually he'd be on the podcast, and we're very excited to have him. We have Hideo's very good friend, Mr. Nicolas Refn, with us on the show. So let's dive right in to their talk about Heartman, Death Stranding, and their collaborations. Well, it's so great to have you with us here, Nick. Hideo, you guys have had a long friendship that we've followed both online and in real life, with you guys crisscrossing into each other's projects. But I wanted to start today with just a little bit of background on how you guys first met. Because I remember, I think you met for the first time in London, I think. Is that right, Nick?
ニコラスの僕映画のファンで
Well, I was a big fan of Nicolas's work and had always wanted to meet him. When Drive was released in Japan, I got in touch with the distribution agency and asked for Nicolas's contact information. So, I emailed him, and when I was on a business trip to Europe, we met up in London. Nicolas came all the way from Denmark. I think that was over 10 years ago.
I think that it was actually longer.
もっと前かな
You think so?
But around 10 or 11 years ago. I know that none of us had gray hair when we first saw each other.
でちょっと暗いレストランで
I remember we met up in a dimly lit restaurant. It was my first time meeting Nicolas, and yet, from that moment on, after just 20 or 30 minutes of talking, I felt like he was a childhood friend, someone I had known from ages ago.
What was your impression?
Similar. In a way, it was a very strange dinner we had. And because I'd been the distribution company that did Drive in Japan had reached out to me about Hideo wanting to connect. And so London seemed to be a good place for us to have dinner. And so when I came, I was 1, and Hideo and crew were about 5. And it was kind of intimate in a very poetic way, because it was all through, third voice because of translations. And there was this silence around us where we would just look at each other in between our talks. And I think that's where we connected. For some reason, there was, as Hideo said, there was a kindred spirit between us. And we were both, ironically, at very pivotal moments in our lives, career-wise as well. Hideo's life was going to radically change very soon, and so was mine. So we met at a certain time where there was a connective tissue that was like, we will always remember this moment, because when we left the restaurant, both our lives changed radically, but we also continued to exchange the evolution between us. So it was like we were in each other's conscience constantly, because we were both evolving, and then you can say we even had similar personal lives, and we had similar amount of children. He had boys, I had girls. He had a wife, I had a wife. And we were very much like, that's really all we we do is we go home or we work. And I kind of felt from then on that, and even age-wise, twins at birth, separated, find each other again.
そうです。その後ロスであったり、
Yes. And after that day, we've met up in places all over the world like Los Angeles, Denmark, Japan. We don't get to see each other often, but I feel that I have a very special relationship with Nicolas. I have many creators that I'm close to, but I'm most connected with Nicolas, I think. He sends me messages all the time too, but it's usually not text-based. It's mostly pictures or emojis or videos. We're like elementary school kids, just going back and forth like that. I don't really tell people this, but about 3 years ago, I was ill for a little while. And during that time, Nicolas constantly sent me messages of encouragement. He even sent me a video. In it, he was like, "Keep your spirits up, Hideo." I'm really grateful. He's a true friend.
Wow, that's so special. I mean, you guys clearly have this sort of kinship. As you said, Nick, it feels like you are sort of separated at birth. When you first met Hideo, I don't know how much you knew about his work, but obviously over time you grew to know more about it. But what fascinates you about Hideo and his work, Nick? Because I know you've been interested in sort of the gaming world and trying to understand more about that. Hideo obviously took a great liking to your work theatrically and in television and whatnot. But what was it about Hideo's work as you looked into it that impressed you?
I think that, obviously what he had created in his past was very iconic. And we're both child of pop culture in a way, we're both kind of, we grew up with, the evolution of technology at various stages. So first and foremost, I think it's the act of creativity that connects us, and that it's about expressing. And we have obviously at the core a different canvas, yet it's a very similar canvas philosophically. So even though we come from two different backgrounds, we see very similar on the actual process. And because of Hideo, I obviously got to understand a lot more and intrigued by what the gaming world was evolving. And you could kind of say, because my world of film and television has really stagnated in many ways, and it's not very aggressive in its evolution. It's very repetitive. So I have also been, in a way, wandering in the desert, trying to figure out, well, what is the canvas of the future? And I think that, having been inspired by Hideo, the idea of gaming is the only right now multimedia form that continues to evolve and build and give opportunities. So I'm very, it's like you're a student of someone else in a way. I kind of feel that the inspiration comes from there, that I am very inspired by what he's doing and obviously seeing. And coming on as Heartman was a real eye-opener as well, just technically. I always felt that, in a way, I was playing Hideo Kojima in his own game. Yeah. So I felt very honored to have that kind of aura around me. But I think that we're very good together because the worlds that we come from are obviously becoming more connected to each other. His world is just more advancing, where mine is stagnating.
Tell us a little bit more about the Heartman character. I remember actually I was in San Diego one time when you were getting scanned, because today I was also scanning me. We were doing that for my little cameo, but you had a major role in this game. Hideo, maybe tell us why did you want to put Nicolas in Death Stranding? Was that always part of the plan, or how did you come up with this idea?
So the theme of Death Stranding is connection, and so I wanted to use connections to bring the game to life. Same goes for Guillermo and Norman too. In the back of my mind, I always thought to cast a game using my connections. And I thought Hartman was the perfect role for Nicolas. He only did a scan, but it's not an easy task. He may be a director, but he can also act. So it went really well, actually.
Yeah, I mean, for you, Nick, I know I'm sure it must have been quite interesting to trust Hideo with this opportunity of bringing you as yourself kind of into this game, but acting and playing this sort of character. What was your expectation of? Did Hideo tell you much about the character? I mean, obviously you had done sort of the scanning for it, and probably didn't know quite what was going to happen. But what was your impression of who Hartman was?
Well, it was obviously very clear to me, as I said earlier, that I was playing him, and in a way, my contribution was the physicality. In a way, it's you project yourselves onto other components. I mean, It was fascinating being when we were doing the actual scanning itself and digitalization, and it was a real eye-opener of, again, like, okay, what is the future going to look like of entertainment? And this is really where things are happening. But in terms of the character itself, he told me the name and a little bit about the background, how it functions, how the character functions. But at the same time, when you are a creator, you just need to create. And I'm there essentially as eye candy. But I think that because of our relationship, it felt very comfortable, of more like giving myself to him like clay, and he could then mold me afterwards into what he wanted me to become, and in the future will continue to evolve. And it's for me, it's kind of exciting not knowing what's going to happen, but just know that I exist in the universe, and more surprised and intrigued to see what's going to be coming next.
Oh, well, yes, we're all intrigued to wonder. But Hartman as a character, Hideo, tell us a bit about the conceptualization of that. Did you really build the character based on Nick, or how did this character come into sort of the world of Death Stranding?
いろんなキャラクターが出てくるんですけども
Well, there are many characters in the game, but most of them have some sort of connection with the world of the dead. And it's said that the weight of the soul is 21 grams. At first, I thought of a character who can go back and forth between the world of the living and the dead. And this person travels back and forth in search of his family, and that happens every 21 minutes. When I thought about this character, I instantly thought of Nicolas. So from then on, this imaginary character of mine began to take shape by mixing parts of Nicolas into him.
ニコラさんはインテリでオタクなんで
Nicolas is an intelligent type and also an otaku, which is something we have in common, I think. He is well versed in movies, books, music, and art, so I incorporated all those parts while imagining Nicolas. And well, Nicolas has fans all over the world. It was quite risky to use him as a character because there are many people who highly respect him. So in the midst of creating the character of Hartman, I had Nicolas take a look at it throughout the process. And the thing that made me the happiest was the fact that Nicolas really liked it. And after releasing the game, Hartman was quite popular. There are lots of characters in Death Stranding, but Hartman ranks like first or second place in terms of popularity. Higgs is quite popular too, but I was personally relieved to see these results.
Yeah, no, I think everyone responded to his story, and this concept of Hartman is such a unique character, right? This idea that his heart stops, beating every 21 minutes. It's such an original concept for a character. Nick, do you remember when Hideo first told you about that concept and how this tied into the character?
I mean, it was fascinating to hear, and obviously I was like, great. I mean, it's genius. But what I thought was more, in a way, and it's about when you cross the barrier and and kind of exchange ideas or become a vessel for, like in my situation, for Heartman, for Hideo. Because what essentially was the essence of Heartman is family. And I know that both, you can kind of say me and Hideo are very romantics. You know, we are very idealists in certain terms, like modern day samurais. And so I think that what was more exciting to me at the end was really getting to become a component of what, or a part of something that actually is very, very, it's a very mirror between us, because we are very much devoted to family and family values and the existence of our family and how important our families are to each other. So I didn't felt I was just, quote unquote, you know, being a character in a great game, but I was essentially being, in a way, the essence, the core creative narrative that would spring everything else into motion, even though it works on a more, you know, sidelined narrative-wise, as I am part of the universe. But, you know, someone giving themselves to you, like Hideo would say, I want you to play Heartman, this is who Heartman is. I was like, I want to give myself to that the same way that you are honoring me playing you. So it became like a very intimate conversation where I would just listen to Hideo telling me, and I would then become his alter ego in a way. And I think that kind of exchange was, for me, what made it exciting to kind of dive into it.
And you've obviously returned the favor with Hideo appearing in some of your projects. I know he'll be in your upcoming Netflix show, Copenhagen Cowboy, which we're excited to check out in January when that arrives. Why did you decide to put Hideo in some of your work?
Well, I think that after having done Heartman, it just became like almost an exchange of honor. Like I want, and because the parts that Hideo have done both in Tool to Die Young is in a way disconnected to the narrative of the show, but is a real extension of myself, my own presence in the actual creativity. And when it came to Copenhagen Cowboy, you know, not revealing too much, but, you know, the connected tissue to Hideo is, again, in a way, he's playing me in the show. And so that's where I felt that there was because there is it's very intimate to give your identity or your heart, quote unquote, to someone else, to be that, to represent that. You know, obviously with some of the actors that I've worked on my films, you know, whether it's Mads Mikkelsen or Ryan Gosling, that very much project my alter egos. We're still very different from as people, but with Hideo, there is something very easy between us because we are so connected on a spiritual level. So I felt for my show here, Copenhagen Cowboy, that he would be like the supreme spiritual force.
And how is Hideo as an actor?
Well, I'm not an actor, so I'm just kind of there for presence. I was also interested in seeing Nicolas's job site, so I really enjoyed that. I've played the role of an assassin before too. I was curious about seeing how he works and how he directs, so it was a lot of fun.
And I think that we had a real, it was interesting because obviously when I was being scanned for Death Stranding, that technical process is kind of stops, and at a certain point after a day, you're done, you know, and then everything is captured. But with the Tool to Die Young, I remember that when Hideo came on set, and you know, we took one take, and and 2 takes. And I think there was this like, okay, I guess we're done. It's like, no, we're going to go on for another 10 hours, doing the same thing. So, and he was great about it, because I remember we wrapped around like 2 a.m. and he had to get up at 6 a.m. to go and work on his game. But it was a great kind of giving oneself to the process. And when we did Copenhagen Cowboy, we did it through social components remote, because his character is remote from where the other characters are talking to him. But he's very good. I will say he's very consistent, and he's very, very he's very charismatic, and I think we could do a great comedy together, because it essentially would just consist of me and him sitting looking at each other with a voiceover.
I'd watch that. So tell us a bit about Copenhagen Cowboy, Nick, right? Everyone's very curious about it. We know it's now coming in early next year. We're going to get to see it. We know it's you filmed it in your home country, Denmark, set in Denmark. Tell us a bit about what can we expect from it?
Well, a hell of a good time. I basically, because the pandemic and, which was very, devastating in many ways, we got stuck here in Denmark, and I didn't know what really to do and so forth. And my part of the industry, which is obviously film and television, I've had, as I said, a very challenging relationship to, because I do feel that there's an enormous stagnation in it creatively. So I was, pretty depressed, and I just suddenly came up with this idea to do a show about a character called Mew, and she was going to be an extension of One Eye, which was Mads Mikkelsen in Valhalla Rising, and Drive, Ryan Gosling's character, and Vitaya, who's Lieutenant in Only God Forgives. I wanted to kind of revisit that character, and I created her as a female, and that really started kind of becoming very exciting to me. And then Netflix was around, and they were very eager to get into business, and I was very nervous because working with conglomerates can be very challenging, because with Hideo and myself, there is this very much like, we can only do what we do, and we have to be left alone doing it. Otherwise, somebody else should do it. So we're very pragmatic, and I certainly was with this show. But Netflix ended up being a terrific partner, and a wonderful relationship started there. It was defined as Netflix winning Refn moving forward. But yeah, I wanted to make a show that kind of encumbers everything that I desire, but also obviously challenge the notion of what is the future of narrative. The idea of commercial narrative being more and more uninteresting, and niche being the new mainstream. This was a great place to kind of set the stage for I guess, my own version of a superhero. And I shot it all in Denmark, which I never expected I would do. So that has been I've been very rejuvenated lately, creatively, because of that process. We had a great premiere in Venice. And then I just did a movie with Prada called Touch of Crude, which is a further kind of evolution of my own kind of going up against, commercial narrative, and what I think there's, in a way, much more openness to what the future will look like creatively. So I've been in Milan for the last 4 weeks, all of September into October, shooting a film with them. And that's been, again, enormously fascinating creatively, and the collaboration between us. I helped them with their fashion show and so forth. But out of that came the idea of doing this film together. That's going to premiere next year. So I've been excited, in a way. I felt I've wandered the desert for a long time, blind, and I've come out of it now, excited to see and create for the future. Life is short. Try to have a good time as long as you can.
With good friends like Hideo.
Well, what more do you need?
Do you think your collaboration will continue, Hideo, moving forward with Nick? I mean, what are the types of things that you want to work with him on? You obviously guest in his shows, he's guesting your games, but do you think you guys will do more together as you explore other, mediums you want to play with, or Nick with games and things?
そう、常になんか一緒にやりましょうっていうことは言ってるので。
Yeah, we're always talking about doing something together. And as Nicolas just said, life is short. And I want to do something that will change the world. More than a revolution, but something like that. Nicolas and I, we have a very different approach to how we create things or how we do storytelling. But at the core of our creativity, we have many similarities. Like how we want to do something new that no one has done before. So we build inspirations off of each other, and I like to do something together that will change the world, change the future, and maybe even change the past.
Ooh, interesting idea. You talk a lot, Nick, about the idea of narrative changing and less, commercial narrative, but also just the medium is changing, and Netflix, as you said, is kind of pushing in new directions. Are you intrigued by the interactive world and some of the possibilities of using, real-time 3D and CG? I mean, you've done a lot. You're a master of kind of in-camera, visuals and lighting and things like that. But are you intrigued to play more in sort of the virtual world now?
Oh, absolutely. I find it incredibly intoxicating. And it's a world I know very little about. For example, my brain doesn't function very well with understanding technology. I know 2 + 2 = 4, but that's about it. So I'm like, I suck everything to me, but I don't always understand it, which obviously I've always liked to create in worlds where I don't really know anything, because it automatically forces you to look at everything in a different perspective. It's like whenever you make, in my situation, something, you have to erase the past completely, just exterminate it in order to create something new. Like almost both knowledge is great to create the future, but it can also be a hindrance, especially if you have success, you can very quickly fall into the trap of repeating it. So the idea of making something with the ignorance of not knowing, I've always found very intriguing, because then the act of creativity itself becomes the main, it becomes a dominating factor, which is what it really is all about. I mean, what we do, Hideo and I, is that we create. And if we didn't create, I don't know what we would do. I don't really see us doing anything else. So the act of creativity is first and foremost what's ahead of us. But for me, the way the evolution of technology, I find very fascinating, and I'm very optimistic about the future. I think that there is a lot of, we're still at a very early stage. I always say, we can compare it to evolution of the wheel. We've maybe got the wheel in place of technology and creativity. Just wait till we get to the airplane. Like there's so many exciting components ahead of us. But as Hideo said, one of the things we also need to do is deconstruct the norm in order to continue to challenge the future. Because if you don't, we very quickly again stagnate. And then what's the purpose? Then the point becomes obsolete, where if you create to inspire, which is what creativity is essentially is to act 100% as yourself and inspiring, then there is something very beautiful in that.
That's a great note to end this episode on, I think. Hideo, any final thoughts on what we're going to see from Heartman in the future? Have we seen the last of him, or you think he might appear at some point in the future in something you do?
ニコラス的にはハートマンでスピンオフ作ってくれってずっと言われてるんです。
Well, Nicolas keeps telling me to create a Hartman spin-off, or create a Hartman figure. And Hartman is really popular, so maybe he'll be back. We'll see. The only thing Nicolas and I can do for the world is create things. We aren't capable of doing anything else, so we'll probably keep making things until we die. And as Nicolas was saying, creating things is renouncing the past and exterminating your former self in order to make something new. I don't have many people in my life who will say things like this, but Nicolas is always honest with me. So yes, I would like to make something new with him someday.
Well, you guys have had an incredible partnership so far with the worlds colliding, and I have no doubt there'll be much more in the future. Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Nick.
Absolutely.
It's now time to wrap up the episode.
That was such a great episode. It's clear that Hideo, you and Nick have such a great collaboration and mutual respect for each other. So it was awesome to hear about your ongoing collaborations, which I'm sure are going to continue. So thank you again, Nick, for joining us on the podcast live from Denmark, where he lives. And don't forget, Brain Structure's mailbox is still open, so please continue sending messages our way, and any messages or questions for Hideo, your thoughts on the podcast and guests or topics you would like us to cover, just let us know. The link to the message form can be found in the episode description.
Please
look forward to next week's episode of Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure.
さようなら。
Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure is a production by Spotify Studios in association with Kojima Productions and Fam Inc. TGA, the Jeff's Answer MC, Jeff Keighley. Narrator, Owen Maki. Music, Silent Poets. Visual design, Mechikuro. Producer, Hiro Furuki. Director, Kohei Takizawa. Executive producer at Spotify, Asami Sekine. Special thanks to Kojima Productions, Ayako Terashima, Masafumi Chiba, Miki Suga, and Aki Saito. Hosted by Hideo Kojima.
Did you enjoy the talk with Death Stranding's Heartman, Nicolas Winding Refn? I really felt the bond between them. Heartman is such a popular character in Death Stranding, so I enjoyed learning more about the character. Coming up next week, a special about the master of the film music, Ennio Morricone. Hideo will select his favorite tracks too. Don't miss it.
Episode will be streamed in Japanese and in English. Spotify Original Podcast. Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. Streaming worldwide starting September 8th, 2022.